Let's get started.
Hello, welcome back to the Humanist Hubris podcast. We're continuing our conversation on humanism, and starting off from today's episode, we are going to be talking about the topic of human rights, which is a central topic to humanism and how human beings relate. I think human rights are the greatest achievement that we have had to structuring society and representing the individual with, individual and institutions, just being able to separate those two entities' interests. And I think as humanists, it's something that we celebrate and it's something that we study. And I think the topic of human rights, itopic yekuti muZimbabwe haisati yanyatsonzwisisika zvakanaka and we get to a point where unonzwa munhu achiti rights zvenyu izvi zvinonetsa. It's whenever you say kuti you have your rights, whenever you start talking about rights, vanhu vanotokutarisa kunge idzi dzakutotanga kuumana. So I think let's start with the origins of rights, or the concept of rights. Where did it start from?
All right. It's rights is a worldwide topic, but it's particular when it comes to Zimbabwe and particularly Africa. That's why most of the time when human rights instruments is proclaimed by United Nations, you'd find Africa will have its own version. For example, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, you'd find Africa is its own. Why? In the Western world, they prioritize someone as an individual, but in the setup, African setup, and particularly Zimbabwean setup, a group. So they would prefer to say people's rights or people's rights, people's as a group. So it's a concept with a long history. Time yana ya Hammurabi's code.
Who?
Hammurabi.
Okay, Tangalis, who's that?
All right, Hammurabi is one of the well-known person. Akatanga kuvane sort of like structured constitution. Pakanyora ma do's and don'ts in the ancient Babylon. Good. We do this. We don't do this. We do this. If you do this, if you trespass against this, you're punished like this. Then on Hammurabi's code. Young we say do's and don'ts. The same concept yaka developed over the period of time, which you have English Bill of Rights, Tauya, French Revolution in the 18th century, Tauya kusvika pakazova Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. Tauya kunoko. Ndabudisa mukahwa kuti pane musiyano the way my rights are not in the Western world or first world countries nekuma third world countries, especially in Africa. Pane musiyano. General background yekuti my rights akapera. Ndapopa also a general difference between how rights are viewed in the first world country, then how are they viewed in the third world countries.
So let's go back to ndingafunzwa kuti what is a right? Ndofanirwa kupindura ndichitichi. Like I'm not asking this out of it's something that I really want to understand as well. And say, all right, this is my right. As a this is your right. How should I answer that? What is a right?
A right is an entitlement. But as I said earlier on, when we are in the Zimbabwean context, you don't just have entitlement without responsibility.
I think is that in the Zimbabwean context, or I think it is in the whole world as well, because I think you mentioned rights and responsibilities. I think I've been seeing a lot of debates online on that. Like you can't have a parental right without fulfilling a parental responsibility, for example. So I was saying right is an entitlement that I have, provided I carry out the responsibility that comes with that entitlement.
Yeah, rights in general, at universal level, they are entitlement, which has nothing to do with responsibility. That's why people would claim that they have the right to do this, they have to do this, but they don't claim that they have responsibility to do this. The demarcation which I made when I say in the Western world, they concentrate much on an individual, while in the African context, they concentrate much on a group or on a community. Maybe zvanyatsobuda mustatement, pane statement raumwe muzvinapfungwa philosopher ainzi René Descartes, kuti I think, therefore I am. Vamwe vanoti cogito ergo sum. Je pense donc je suis French. Then African way of viewing this same concept, they say I am because we are, as it was said by Mbiti, which means the essence of a person is seen through his or her membership to the larger community, which is different from the Western view of rights. That's why I mentioned particularly the regional human rights instruments. For example, I mentioned them in 1989. There was a United Nations Charter on the Rights of the Child. In 1990, Africa had to come up with the same sort of charter, but using the African language by adding the rights and welfare of the child.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes. So
and how did the United Nations take that?
They accepted that.
Okay.
Yeah, because in certain societies, like in African society, the issue of responsibility and welfare is very, very important.
Yeah.
Before the entitlement of saying I have the right to do this. Because the rights of an individual in an African context can be limited by the society. The society comes first. But in the first world country, the society comes later. Because the individual should be prioritized.
So which model works there? Which model works better in your understanding as a philosopher? When you look at, like you mentioned that in the Western world, it's more emphasis on the individual, and here it's more emphasis on the community, the individual relative to the community. Did I get that right? Or
the individual's rights can only be enjoyed through participation into community activities. Right. You can enjoy your rights as a team. You collectively enjoy your rights. Because you have a responsibility. You don't have rights, you have a responsibility. You owe the community something before the community respects you.
Oh. So are we saying people who are not fulfilling their responsibilities to the community don't have rights? Like, let's take for example prisoners, criminals. Those people don't have rights. Do they have any right? Do they deserve?
They have limited rights.
Okay. All right. So when you say they have limited rights, that means they have access to some rights. They have some access to some entitlements, right? Like we take away your right to freedom.
Yeah, basically like the right to be alive. Yes, the right to be alive, the right to be fed, but they might not have the right to move whenever they wish to.
So do rights, Ngariti, you're explaining to a lay person here. My rights are my categories, and are those categories like visually like I think my rights which is okay, the right to life. I remember I once came across this argument that all individuals are endowed with the inalienable right to life. Right? I think other societies then Yoruba and also they disagree with that. They say no, the death sentence should be on. I think there has been that debate, and I think Zimbabwe also joined in that debate recently, and they're trying to make a move towards removing the death penalty. So my rights are in my categories, which rights are more important, which rights how are they classified? Because I think there should be a hierarchy somewhere for the system to function.
Yeah, they might have hierarchy if you try to look at the rights using Abraham Maslow concept. Even if you look at his pyramid, you find at the base the particular needs which are physiological. And go on and on and on. Because you can't say the right to freedom of conscience is the same as the right to life. You need to be alive first before having a freedom of conscience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yes,
first things first.
They're great.
Then I came across, I think as we move towards this concept of rights, my favorite of which I think that's the right that we represent as humanists and as free thinkers, the right to freedom of religion and belief, or FORB as they call it. Would you care to explain, like, what does that mean, the right to freedom of belief? And why is it important, and why are we very particular about that right?
As it is instituted in Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion or belief is very, very important. Why? Because some minority religions are suffering what we might call majority tyranny, where you are tyrannized just because but means it does not necessarily mean that you're wrong, merely because you're so humanists have the right to defend that right, because if any government or any institution can take away freedom of expression or freedom of conscience or freedom of religion or belief, that same very institution is also likely to take freedom to be a humanist.
That's true.
So that's why humanism is much interested in seeing that this right is really protected.
So what does it entail? Like that every individual has the freedom to have their own religion, their own belief system, and they should not be persecuted or denied access to any other right.
Yeah. As I said earlier on, my rights when it comes to Africa and my limitations. So my limitations Panama conditions. You should enjoy them in such instances. If your right becomes a threat to other people's rights, then you are no longer supposed to be enjoying that.
If your right becomes a threat to other people's rights, that's interesting. Because there was a global youth summit for for the freedom of religion and belief, and that happened last year. And among the key topics there was something related to what you mentioned, which is if your right becomes a threat to other people's rights, then you shouldn't have access to that right. There was an argument where apparently there is one of the nature of rights is that no right is more important than the other, and no right should be substituted for another. Is that practical? Can I just summarize it? And all right, let's start there before I get into other details.
Yeah, it's not practical because rights are not the same. Because there are ways where you, for example, freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. You might be practicing your religion in a public space where other people also have their own religious beliefs. Then pane pakuve nyaya yerespect yekuti uzive kuti kune vamwe vanhu vane maonero akasiyana nako vanogona kunge vane zvitendero zvakasiyana nezvako. So you don't have to force your religion on everyone's neck. Yes, you have the right to believe in whatever you believe in, to practice, but not to force it on people, especially in public places.
Oh, we did mention something like that, as like religion is like a private part. Don't take it out in public.
Yeah, everyone has this or here one. So ukafamba expose yatu your problem. But even if ukafamba now expose, people they know that is having something jaka hide. It becomes a problem when you make it public. And when you feel like everyone should follow your way, it means good if you practice it and you respect other people's views.
All right. Then think about 3 more follow-up questions before we wrap this up. The first one is it's more of a practicality thing, right? I remember when I was starting off this podcast, and this was way back before we had all this. I think you remember I was talking to you, just running around, talking to different guys who were doing videography and all that. And one of the guys, they asked me, like we were towards closing the deal on him doing our video shoots, right? And he asked me, what is your podcast about? And I told him it's a podcast by atheists and humanists. We're exploring the value of non-religious belief systems. And he was like, I'm not okay with working on that. His argument was not because I have anything personal against your belief system, although I disagree with you, but because if my clients know that I'm working with an atheist, I'm most likely going to lose my clients. You see? And I was like, I understand. I walked away. And then later on, I saw, there was was it a gay couple in the US? Not sure now. That was suing this other cake maker for refusing to make a wedding cake for a gay wedding, that is. And it just got me wondering. I think it takes us back to the issue of the way rights are perceived in the West and the way rights are perceived in Africa. Are 2 different things. What was he right? Was this guy right to not want to work with me based on that? Because I think he was right, because you don't want to mess with your business. But on a principle level, was he right?
Was partly right and partly not right, because what professionalism is all about, you work with the person, not on account of what you believe as an individual. But this is business you're doing. You should be professional. You should not allow your religious beliefs to interfere with your work. That is professionalism. And if sometimes some people have extremely limiting religions or belief systems. It's fine. They can say no, and they can still go to look for other people. They've that right, because they'll be feeling that they are promoting what they don't believe in.
Okay. So suppose this was to be taken into a court of law. Suppose I was to say, I want to sue this guy for discriminating against me.
You literally don't have a case.
But these guys had a case outside.
Because the guy didn't take money, so you can't claim that he's actually not respecting your right.
You know, let me just look up this. I just want to check how the court on this particular case I'm referencing, what the ruling was. Just do this. Okay, so this is on Reuters. Let's see. Apparently, this was in Colorado, right? So apparently, the baker who had won narrowly in victory over his refusal to make a wedding cake for a gay couple lost his appeal for a ruling in a separate case that he violated a state anti-discrimination law by not making a cake to celebrate a gender transition. That is interesting. So outside, you say, okay, outside apparently he had a case and he lost his appeal, unfortunately. This side, I won't have a case.
Of course, you won't have a case.
As long as he didn't take my money.
There's no basis for you to claim that he failed to respect your rights. He only refused to work with you because what he or she feels that you are doing, it doesn't tally with his or her or an ideas. So he just said, I don't want to get involved in your ideas.
Okay.
If you are suing the person, in other words, you are trying to force the person to follow your own way.
Okay.
Go and look for those who are willing.
Okay, all right.
Because if this is a private company, yeah, so it's very understandable. But if it was a state institution which is heavily subsidized by the state, and then someone who is manning a particular position in that state institution tells you such statements, then
I guess I have to find a lawyer and just see what happens. But I think towards the end now.
Yeah, maybe it depends what your lawyer is going to say. Because sometimes people think they have a case, maybe because of the court they are going to. But I think in all types of courts, you find it difficult to have a case to sue a person just because he or she denied you a particular service at his or her a private company.
Okay. So let's just go back to how we have been interacting with rights as Zimbabweans, children's rights. I think there has been that long debate on parents saying you're giving these children too many rights and too little responsibilities. Apparently, teachers also complaining that children are now being ungovernable because apparently they're being given too many rights. Is there a danger of putting much emphasis on rights and less emphasis on responsibilities? Because the way I understand life, at least as a humanist, is there is, like you say, there is the entitlement side of things, and then there is the responsibility
and welfare.
And welfare of yourself and of the community as well. Is there a danger kuti tikumuramba tichingoti marights, and there is very little that is being talked about on the responsibility side of things? Is that something that we as humanists should be worried about, that we're just teaching the good side and not teaching the bad side of, well, it's not really the bad side, but the heavier side of the reality of the life that we live, and how can we change that?
I think humanism is clear from the word go. It cares, as I said in previous episodes, it cares about human values and human interactions. So that question is somehow is an answered question.
Oh, please do re-answer it for me.
It's an answered question. So you can't claim that you are giving children too much rights when probably they become rogue or whatever. It is because if a parent fails to parent, then the child does whatever he or she does. It's not the problem of rights. It's the problem of the parent.
Is this a topic that you touched on in your monologue?
Yes, it's one of those topics I touched on, how to introduce children to critical thinking, especially in relation to this particular right we're talking about, of freedom of thought, conscience, and religion or belief, where children should be given knowledge, enough knowledge. These people called Jews, they believe in 1, 2, 3 things. These people called Muslim, they believe in 1, 2, 3 things. These people called Christian, they believe in 1, 2, 3. This Atheist believes in 1, 2, 3 things. These non-religious people believe in 1, 2, 3 things. And the parents should be honest enough, if they don't know anything about Judaism, it doesn't harm to take the child to the rabbi, so the child can ask questions to the rabbi and hear more about the religion. Take the child to a priest or a pastor, take the child to an imam or to a traditionalist.
And then let them get the best answers from...
Because the problem which many parents have is that they just treat their own religion as true, and they demonize others. And it ends there.
Yeah, I was reading, I don't remember where I saw this, but this guy was claiming that the biggest obstacle to knowledge isn't ignorance, but it is the illusion of knowledge that is held by those who in decision-making position. Like, so I don't know, man. Yes, it's a very difficult thing to admit to your child, I think, to say, and you see,
Yeah, but it helps to be honest.
That it does.
If you don't want to say and you can say let us look for the answer together.
That's a smarter way of doing it. So you're saying there's no problem with emphasizing rights? It's just a problem with people who are failing to manage their own children.
There's no problem in emphasizing rights, especially on children, because it's actually meant for their welfare.
All right. So I think in Zimbabwe, we come from two different schools, schools of thought. There's our generation. Sister Akurachiro, I don't think it's so much. Go. And you talk to anyone from our generation, they'll tell you, you know what the problem is with these kids is man.
Yeah, but I don't think Kurova can change a child. The parent has failed already.
So are you saying our parents
we
failed?
will be actually administering punishment on the wrong person. we should actually punish the parent for the misgivings of children. And it has been indicated in our children's act in Zimbabwe. And many parents were complaining.
Let's go back. What is she?
Parents should be punished for the misgivings of their children.
What happens to personal responsibility of the child? Since the child is a free acting person.
It's not a free acting person, but it's not an adult.
No, but children do make their own decisions. I have interacted with a lot of these children, man. These kids are they're on some weird stuff. You understand?
Yeah. If they're parented so well, they're actually, in the African culture, they say if you meet a child, you can see you have already seen his or her family. Because a child is an ambassador of where he or she grew up.
What about those children that they come from a really good family, but like I say, they're on some weird stuff. He's doing drugs. He's stealing money from home. I know.
Find root cause of all those problems. Our parents.
But man, what if they're just doing it on their own?
There's no child who can enjoy abusing drugs when there are no problems. There's no child who can enjoy stealing money if the parent is doing his or her part properly.
I will find you a child psychologist to talk to in this show one day, because most of these people that are grown up, man. I think 15, 16, I think that's grown up age, right? At least 14, 15, 16.
But by that time, by 14, you should have been done with parenting. You should have been done with laying the foundation. That's why I see some institutions like Catholic Church, they tell you that the age of reason is 7. But they're expecting that at 7, the foundation has been worked on already.
I have come across a lot of them. I was saying, if you can't get a kid to buy into your belief systems by the age of 7, forget it. They're done.
Of course. So, but it's the parent who carefully parents the child. But if you let it be whatever the way it is, you're spoiling the child.
So doesn't that take us back to what I was saying to you? We have a society that emphasizes parental rights, but let's help these people, these parents, to match the parental responsibility. So you have parents who have their rights, like you were saying to me, the parent has the right to teach the children to follow their belief system. But then
not their belief system only, to choose which type of belief system the parents who are Christians who can choose that their children, let them be Muslim or let them be traditionalists.
That's rare, but yes, they're allowed to. But I'm saying, in that situation now, they have all this power, but they have very little understanding of the responsibility that they have and how to execute that responsibility. Because some people might have some understanding of the responsibility and not have the technical know-how, right? Because, like you say, parenting is a skill. So we have already identified one dimension where we have people emphasizing their rights and not emphasizing responsibility, and we're seeing how that problem is trickling down to their children and affecting the next generation. Are there other areas as well where the same thing is being done, which is just leading to a continuous degradation of our society? We just saw it happening with children. Now you have children again who are being given their rights, and there's very little that is being explained to them about their responsibilities. What's happening there? How can we fix it?
Yeah, it's a big challenge, because somehow, yes, we in the African context, we respect rights, we can behave that rights came, but somehow, the coming of the colonization, the coming of Christianity, the coming of whatever, somehow disrupted the civilization. Because in the past, children were not only belong to their parents. I mentioned it before that according to African values, a person is a person with the society. So a child belongs to the whole community.
That's too idealistic, but I see where
That's why you find that being told, if you meet anyone who is the same age with your father, is your father, greet him and say, Mamka say Baba. So anyone with the same age with your mother, the same anyone with the same age with your grandmother, the same. That's the African concept. It seems it is fading.
Yeah, I think it's dying very. But
and yes, some might blame rights for its dying, but it would be unfair because yeah, you can blame rights, but I don't think it's fair because it has a lot to do with the parents than the rights.
Thank you, Tauya. I think to just sum up this, we spoke about rights, their origins, how rights are tied up to the needs of people, right? And the differences that exist in African perception of rights and the Western perception of rights, and more importantly on children's rights. And that's a conversation that I would like to know what our listeners think about on this topic, because there is that debate, and I don't think that debate is most likely is gonna end anytime soon.
Of course, it won't. And even if people will be thinking, is it right to give corporal punishment children? They've been ruled out, ruled back, ruled out by the High Court itself.
And so it's still happening in some schools. It's still happening in homes, and yeah. So thank you. I think that just emphasizes one of those things, like topics that we need to just keep helping each other understand and improve the human experience. So if you're watching this, please do let us know what you think on human rights. What did we miss out on, and what should we add whenever we do decide to jump back into the topic of rights? Should children be given the rights that they're being given? Should there be an extra emphasis on teaching people the responsibility that comes with the rights that they're entitled to? So thank you for watching. Do like and subscribe. Share with your friends. Peace.